Hey everyone, this is James Morgan, James Morgan Jazz YouTube channel. Welcome to my new series started on January 1st called Conversation Series 2026. It's a one-on-one conversations with artists, musicians, producers, radio pioneers that I've either admired or I've recorded with. And I want to learn more about them. I want other people to maybe discover them if they haven't. And also, too, a lot of the musicians and artists that I have been having conversations with over the past 15 episodes, trying to impart some, to let musicians nowadays know that there's an organic way to live music and be in music. A lot of people are sitting in their bedrooms doing one riff over and over until they get it perfect, and then they post it, it goes viral. They're not really writing songs, they're playing Alan Holdsworth is the flavor right now that they all seem to like to imitate. And I'm trying to let younger musicians know that there's value in lugging your gear around, going to clubs, seeing other musicians play, writing songs, playing with other musicians, and jamming with other musicians, because that's where you find your voice and you learn to have a conversation, a musical conversation with other musicians. And I've, over the past, since January 1st, I've had a lot of great contributions. A lot of things have been said that I think have been really helpful for some young musician that may come across the video by chance, and they're supposed to hear it. And hopefully it'll spark that in them to write their own music, be a composer. You know, I'm self-taught, I play by ear. It's not about always about going to school and learning. Maybe you're just somebody who can't afford to go to school. So this is a lot of the musicians I've interviewed. For instance, Hadrian Farad, who I did an album with, he's one of the most sought after top call bass players on the planet. Plays with everybody, Keiko Matsui, I mean, you name it. He doesn't read. And but he's got a great ear, and he can play like nobody. So on the series today, I have a really special guest, somebody I really admire. I love his music. Whenever I have a chance to go see him play locally, I do. And I did want to also say that I've discovered some things about him while I was doing the research that I didn't know that I want to find out more about. So I'm going to go ahead and let you know what I discovered. Some things I do know. He's a musical director, conductor, plays keyboards. He's a composer, producer, arranger, and a singer, a great singer, and an actor too. So aren't we all? But Michael Raye is his name. You can see him on the split screen there, literally in the green room. And he was 7 years old when he gave his first piano recital. So he's got some chops by now. And he was 14 when he played cello at Carnegie Hall. He graduated with music degrees, advanced education in music. And it shows when you go to his shows to see him play. And as a musical director and conductor, this is going back a little bit, he has worked with artists like Gloria Gaynor, Deniece Williams, Little Anthony and the Imperials, and I'm going to have to find out all the details how that happened, to name just a few. And he's toured extensively with both nationally, internationally, with artists like Daryl Hall, Hall & Oates, Michael Bolton, a great singer. And he's recorded with Richie Havens, who I remember as a kid opening Woodstock with a song called Freedom. It's one of my favorite.
Which he made up on the spot.
Yeah, exactly. And he was sweating like crazy there. And then Will Downing, who's excellent. And he's composed for film, television, modern ballet companies with his original compositions. He's a solo artist. He's recorded, arranged, produced his own music, and released his own music. You can go and check it out. He's been on television on The Tonight Show with Johnny Carson, Jay Leno, and Dick Clark's show. He was also in an ABC TV movie, Double Platinum, with Diana Ross and Brandy, singer. Haven't heard much about her lately. And we do have a commonality that he was connected to a spiritual teacher, Sri Chinmoy, who was a great influence in my life between 15 and 20 years old. I was into the Bhakti Yoga and followed him for all that time. And without further ado, I'm going to introduce Michael Raye. How are you doing today, Michael? Thanks for joining us.
Hey, what's up, James? Good to see you again.
Yeah. Hey, also too, where are you originated from? Where were you born? Where were you raised as a child?
Well, I was born in Brooklyn, New York, and I was raised between Brooklyn and Queens, Jamaica, Queens. However, I spent most of my life on the Upper West Side of Manhattan. I lived 25 years on 95th Street between Central Park West and Columbus.
Okay, yeah. So those who know where that is, you'll know, you'll go, oh, I don't. Now, so in your child, did you have brothers and sisters? Were you raised by both of your parents? Was there music in the house? How did you get introduced to music?
Well, I have to tell you my boom boom story because this is how it all started. My mom and dad were together at the time. They were together till I was 11 years old, and then they split up finally for the last time. And but when I was 4 years old, we took a trip as a family to see my father's mother, and she lived in Martinsville, Virginia. And it was probably September, October, something like that. So it was kind of cold in the mountains at night. Beautiful during the day, but at night it would get a little cold. And so we get down there, and my grandmother had a little small 2-bedroom house. And we go to bed the first night. It's about 2 o'clock in the morning. I'm sleeping in between my mom and dad, but I get up out of the bed, and because I remember seeing this piano, or what I call it, the boom boom, outside on the porch. So it was screened in, but as I said, it would get cold in the fall at night. And so I opened up the front door, went outside, and I started banging on what I call the boom boom. And I woke the whole house up, and everybody comes to the front door and says, "What are you doing?" I'm saying, "Well, I'm playing the boom boom." And they said, "Well, everybody got a little laugh out of that." But then they said, "It's kind of cold out here. You better go to bed." So I went to bed. Next night, 2 o'clock in the morning, same thing happened. I get upstairs, get up out of the bed, and I go outside. I'm playing the boom boom. I wake up, but this time only my grandmother and my mother come. And, they laughed a little bit, and then they said, "Well, it's cold out here. You better go to bed." So I didn't try it anymore after that. But I guess I made my point, because I remember the last day that we were there, my grandmother was standing at the kitchen sink. My mother is sitting at the kitchen table, and the two of them are looking at each other, kind of like this, my grandmother here, my mother here. And I'm back over here in this room, kind of peering around, and I just catch a little bit of the conversation. And my grandmother saying to my mother, "Well, maybe you ought to give the boy lessons." And I hear my mother say, "Well, maybe I will." And so that was September, October. We get back to New York, and November comes, and it's my birthday, so nothing happens. But come January, my mother actually followed through and found a teacher for me. And so I started taking lessons when I was 5 years old. I had just turned 5 in November, and so now it's January, and I started taking piano lessons. But we were really poor. We didn't, I didn't have a piano. And at that time, the keyboards wasn't a thing like it is now, Yeah. So I used to practice on the kitchen table. And I did that until we were able to get a piano, which was, I don't know, 4 months, 6 months later, something like that. Nice. And I've been at it ever since.
Yeah. And so when you were on the table, was it like a diagram of the keys?
No, not at all. Not at all. I was just... Yeah, I was just practicing the first five,
Wow.
and then I was practicing, crossing over with my thumb and crossing under with my thumb and crossing over with my third finger, as
Uh,
if I was playing the C major scale or the F major scale,
right.
or the G
Yeah.
major scale, I should say.
Yeah.
And yeah, that's how I got started.
Yeah. So did you have other brothers and sisters or any in the family that were playing music at all or instruments?
No, no,
So
no.
you were
I
the
was
first
I was
one.
the only musician in the
Yeah.
family. Although later on, I had cousins who played
Yeah.
music that I met later on.
So you're 5 years old, and then I'm reading 7 years old, you're doing a recital. How does somebody go from playing on their table in 2 years to playing a recital? That's
Yeah.
remarkable. How did that happen?
Well, I had a good teacher. Her name was an English woman by the name of Irene Stitt, and she just thought the world of me and thought I was very talented. And so I had this idea that, she didn't really push this because she had many students, and it was a group recital that we did.
Uh,
And I decided whatever piece of music that I was going to play, I don't remember what that was now, that I would memorize, and I would go up there and play it from memory, and which I did. And I think I was the only one to do that. But I remember, I remember this from that performance is that my left leg, so I used my right leg for the pedal, but my left leg was going up and down like this and nonstop the whole entire time that I was playing, the whole
yeah.
song. And it was like really kind of a rude awakening to performance, so to speak, because there is, every time you sit down at the piano to perform, there is a certain amount of live theater nervousness that goes on,
Yeah.
and and so that was my first time. But I thought, all said and done, I guess I handled it well because I never stopped. I just kept on going, even though my leg was going crazy.
Yeah. So you did the recital, and then was there a point? And then, of course, then I read that at 14 you were doing Carnegie Hall and you were playing the cello. So did you start playing multiple instruments? And if you
Well,
did, which
yes,
instruments were you playing?
yes.
And were you
So what
studying
happened?
at school at all and that kind of stuff?
Yes. Well, what happened was my piano teacher, Mrs. Stitt, she told my mother, he's outgrowing me. I don't really have that much more to teach him. You need to find a better teacher. And so by the time I went to junior high school, I guess I was 11 years old. And they didn't really need a pianist, but they needed a cellist.
Mm.
And so I started playing the cello in the orchestra. And that was also the year I was 11 years old when my mother found me a new teacher at Manhattan School of Music. So I
Oh,
went to the preparatory division and I stayed there until I finished high school. But when I went there, I had a study with a really wonderful pianist by the name of Jean Graham. She was a Jean Graham. She was a concert pianist, and I actually went to see her at Town Hall in New York City one time to do a concert. So she was a fabulous ice skater, figure skater, and she also was a fabulous pianist. And she became my teacher. And at the same time, I started studying with a cello teacher by the name of Miss Alton, who also taught at Manhattan School of Music. So I was now studying the cello and the piano, and I advanced really quickly on the cello. So by the time that I was 14 years old, I was part of a very, very prominent and world-class youth orchestra called the Youth Symphony Orchestra of New York. Our conductor was Isaiah Jackson, who later went on to conduct the Detroit Symphony for many years. But there were some fantastic musicians, young musicians in this orchestra, and we had a season every season we played. I was in the orchestra for 2 years, 14, 15, and 15, 16.
oh,
And we played Carnegie Hall and Avery Fisher Hall each season. That was part of our season. And so I did have the distinct pleasure of playing Carnegie Hall on at least two occasions and Avery Fisher Hall on two occasions as well.
yeah, that's amazing. Yeah, because The good thing about what you did that up to this point is you learned how to read music, obviously, and you're learning on two different instruments. And the interesting thing about piano is when you play piano, everything is there. You can't change anything. It's the notes are the notes, and everything's handy. Whereas guitar and other stringed instruments, you can change things. You can bend notes. You can do all these other inflections and things. So that's good that you had the two different schools where everything's laid out, but your mind also had challenged where you could kind of go outside that with the cello, with the
Yeah.
tones. Yeah.
Well, later in life, I mean, I played the cello all through high school, junior high and high school. And when I got to college, and now I'm a freshman, I went to Ithaca College to do my undergraduate work, and I'm a piano major there. And it really broke my heart. But I remember that day that I decided that, oh, wow, I cannot take cello lessons. My schedule was just too busy for me to do it. So it broke my heart, but that was the day that I said goodbye to the cello. But, nothing goes to waste in life. And so many years later, I become a composer. Well, actually, I was already composing then, but I mean, I became a professional composer.
Yeah.
And one of the hurdles that a composer has to overcome is the idiomatic writing for the strings. But that was easy for me because I was a string player. So so going to Manhattan School of Music, it brought many opportunities for me. I remember one day that they talked about me, I guess, to some degree, and Leonard Bernstein heard about me, and he asked me to come to his house to play for him one Sunday morning. I think I must have been around, I don't know how old I was. Maybe I was around 12, 13, something like that. So I go to Leonard Bernstein's house and I play for him. He had just discovered this fabulous pianist named Andre Watts. And I guess he was looking for another Andre Watts. But that wasn't me because, Andre Watts, I don't know if you know him at all, but he's a fantastic classical pianist. And he's had a hell of a career. But me, I had other interests. I loved classical music and I enjoyed playing it. However, I would say I didn't love it as much as I love it today. Yeah. Today, I love classical music even more than I did when I was a child, but I loved it back then. But I was interested, I was listening. My father liked people like John Coltrane and Miles Davis and Sarah Vaughan and Billie Holiday. And I can go on and on and on, but that's what I was listening to with him. He was turning me on to this music, and I loved jazz, and I thought it was, wow, this is great, great music. My mother, on the other hand, was listening to, Nat King Cole and Frank Sinatra. I think they called it middle of the road, MOR or something like that back in the day. Yeah, and she was listening to, I think I said Frank Sinatra, but also like Tony Bennett and Andy Williams, people like that. And I loved it. I loved listening to these guys sing. And then Johnny Hartman. Oh my God, did I love Johnny Hartman? He was an amazing crooner. And then, I'm hanging out with my friends, and we're listening to the Temptations and the Four Tops and Martha Reeves and Vandellas and the Supremes, the Jackson 5, and my friend across the street, Chucky, I used to listen to music with him too. And he used to listen to Sugarloaf and Grand Funk Railroad and the Beatles and the Rolling Stones, So I had this incredibly rich musical upbringing. Yeah. And it shaped who I am today as a musician. Because when I start my show, first thing I said, hey, I'm going to play music from many different genres and many different eras of music. And so hopefully I'm going to do something that you know and love. And that's because of my upbringing. I loved and fell in love with so many different types of music that,
Yeah.
I never felt the need to choose, you know.
Sure. Now I know when I was younger, what was the song Marilyn McCoo used to sing? One less egg to fry.
One less bell to answer.
Yeah. And that band, that group was to me, you had the Righteous Brothers, you had what was the name of the
Fifth
band?
Dimensions, Fifth
Yeah, Fifth
Dimensions, yeah.
Dimension. And you had those because I know as a kid, I remember running around and Herman Hermits just came out with Henry VIII. I am, and I was a little kid singing that with them, you know, Henry VIII, I am, you know, it's like, and then Marilyn McCoo and all the Righteous Brothers were great. They had a couple hits, but that's probably where you get your singing ear from, and then the jazz. And I know that for me, when I got into jazz was Bitches Brew was the album for me.
Oh wow,
And,
that was really the beginning of fusion music.
yeah,
Miles Davis, you can give him credit for that. Yeah.
yeah. So yeah, because when I was younger, I was my friends were listening to Grand Funk and Led Zeppelin and The Who and all that, and in junior high, and I was listening to Return to Forever. My brother brought over Hymn to the Seventh Galaxy, which you can see behind my shoulder. I have the cover with Bill Connor's guitars, and that's what made me want to play guitar was that album.
Wow.
And,
Wow.
and then Miles Davis, listening to Bitches Brew, I wore the record out. To me, it was great. And then McLaughlin. So I was my late friend Dean Brown, who passed away. He would say, "You have such an unusual." Most guitar players who are playing this music you're playing now have an R&B background, but I have a fusion background. I didn't really get into music till I heard fusion, and there's not that many people that have that. But Miles Davis and all those guys that were on that album, basically, to me, that it was like a tree. They branched from there into the fusion, and then I always felt I was an extension of that, and I wanted to do that. And I played fusion up till about 2015, 16 when I decided to switch into smooth jazz. But I didn't really get into Coltrane and that. I loved McCoy Tyner, was super popular in the 70s. His piano playing was crazy. Booker T, I love Booker T and G's, you know, all that
Yeah.
kind of Ramsey Lewis I liked.
Ramsey Lewis, yeah.
Yeah. So I was listening to all that and influenced, and by chance I was able to take guitar lessons from Bill Connors, who played on Hymn to the Seventh Galaxy. He lived in Half Moon Bay. I was living in Santa Cruz, where yeah, I mean they were amazing to me. Fifth Dimension is probably one of the pinnacle groups of all time. I mean, there was Petula Clark too. I mean, there was a lot of great people back then singing.
A lot of great artists back then. Yes.
Yeah, I mean, and then you could go R&B, you can go funk. I mean, there's so many, you know, Rick James.
Everything was slamming. You know, I mean, whether it was jazz or R&B or rock and roll, everything was like just at the epitome. You know, the eclipse or something. You know, it was truly amazing listening to all that music at that time.
I think the late 70s or late 60s, more into the early 70s, is when everything just all. And then the 80s, some of the greatest songwriting, you know, with the Fix and all the artists that came out then too. And I think the 90s is when things kind of changed. Yeah, obviously from the grunt, from Kurt Cobain getting rid of all the hairspray bands. But and you have your own music you released. But before we get to that, how did you even connect with Little Anthony and the Imperials? How did that happen, and what did you do with them? What was your connection and your whole story with them?
Yeah, so that was interesting because I knew a guy. I didn't know him well, but I knew a guy who used to come to. I used to run jam sessions in New York, and you know in Manhattan, and the jam sessions were huge. They were the biggest. You know, I used to call it the Soul Gathering. I did it at a place called Wilson's. I started it at a place called Honeysuckle, but I also did it at a another venue where I met this guy, and So I didn't know him well, but he says to me, he says, "Hey, man, but he heard me play and he saw how I was with all the musicians and all like that and singers and he says, listen, little Anthony Imperials are looking for a keyboard player when they come to the East Coast. So I'm going to pass your number on to this contractor." I said, "Sure, okay, no problem. And sure enough, what happened was the contractor called me and he asked me if I was available for this particular show. It just so happened that this show, my first show, was 1992 with Little Anthony and the Imperials, and it was at the Apollo Theater.
Oh, wow.
Now I had never played the Apollo before. I had been there before.
Yeah.
I had never played. This is the first time I ever played the Apollo Theater.
So you're playing with them that night, and you're thinking that's the only time you're going to play with them, and then
yeah, but it ended up being that I was with them for 10 years. From 1992 to 2002. And every time they came to the East Coast, I would tour with them. And I remember one time we did a tour with Frankie Valli down in Florida.
He was still touring. In fact, just to pause you for a minute, a bass player I just interviewed, who I've played with at the Roxy, by the way, he's been touring with him. And I mean, he's ancient and he's still singing and touring, flying all over the world, and they're playing Carnegie Hall and Wembley.
It's incredible. Now I liked Frankie Valli, a bit. I did like him when he was first came out, but when we were opening for him on this tour, one night I decided, let me go into the audience. I want to see his show. So I went into the audience to see his show, and literally he had #1 records from 4 different decades. But I did. I took voice lessons. I started taking voice lessons in my 20s, and I did it for many years. I still take voice lessons now. In fact, I've been taking voice lessons the last I guess 4 years now, and the last 2 or year and a half has been twice a week. And then I've really seen some really wonderful things happen for my voice from all of that.
Do you see a change in your voice from, say, even 20 or 30 years ago to now? Maybe things you couldn't do then, or that you can do now, or things you did then but that you can't do now?
So I believe that I am a better singer today than I was 10 years ago, 5 years ago, 15, 20 years ago. And the reason is because I know more about my instrument. I've been studying it and I've learned more about it. I was not a natural singer, because it just seemed like some people just open up their mouth and it's just beautiful what comes out.
Yeah.
I was not that. I had to work really hard at it, but I did. I worked really hard at it. And so the upshot of it all is that for the first time in my life, I feel like I'm a singer,
Yeah.
I never really felt that. I always felt like a piano player who could sing,
Aside from that, so you're doing all this, Little Anthony and all this. How did you work your way from Brooklyn kid, Jersey, hanging out with the boy bands back there, in that sense, but all that education, and you end up in one of the most beautiful spots on the planet, San Diego, California, the San Diego County. How did you end up coming to the West Coast, and how old were you, and did it involve music, or?
Yeah, well, that's what happened, so I was the second keyboard player for Little Anthony and the Imperials on the East Coast.
Okay.
And then I guess it was 2001, I want to say, he asked me if I would move to Las Vegas and become his musical director. So myself and John DiGiulio, who was he was our drummer. So John and I, with our wives, we moved to Las Vegas to work with Little Anthony, because Anthony did a very, very smart thing. And what that was is that he always traveled with his musical director, but he also traveled with his drummer. Because if you get to a spot and there's a contractor who's contracting all the musicians, and the drummer is lame, you have no chance.
Well, a band is only as good as its drummer. That's a saying. Yeah. It's true.
Yeah. Yeah, yeah, there's some truth in that for sure. And the fact that we had John DiGiulio traveling with us, it meant the world, made my job a whole lot easier
You could
as the director,
relax,
musical
peace
director.
of
Yeah,
mind.
that's right. I knew that was going to be
Yeah,
something, you know.
yeah.
So, yeah, so that's how I ended up in Vegas. And so now, after I was there, um, the day that my car arrived, because we had it shipped from New York, right? The day that my car got there was the day that Anthony quit the room that we were working. And I mean, he didn't ask us, he said, "This is what I'm doing,"
Yeah.
And so that's what happened. He quit the room. And
So you're in LA again, like you said, you got that. So how'd you get into, did you get into acting when you were in LA, or were you doing it before? Or?
well, no, that happened in New York. So yeah, I met this woman who I occasionally see her on social media actually, and Gemma Bulos, I believe her name was. Anyway, I don't know. She was connected, and she turned me on to this audition, and so I wasn't really acting at the time, but I went to the audition, and I've landed the role. So it was the movie Double Platinum, and
Right.
so I had a small role, but a nice role, speaking lines and all like that. And and the thing about it was that I had my own trailer, I mean, they really hooked
Wow.
me up,
Yeah.
and we shot it at the Chicago Blues, I believe that was the name of the blues club on just south of 14th Street, and I think it was 8th Avenue or Hudson,
Yeah.
because I think 8th Avenue starts at 14th Street, if I'm not mistaken. I believe south of 14th Street, it's Hudson, although I'm not sure. I don't remember so much anymore. But anyway, so we shot it there, and so I landed this role, and I had this trailer, and then they did my hair and makeup, and they really
Yeah.
fluffed me, and they paid me a whole lot of money, and I was
You're like, I like this. Yeah.
I said, what the hell am I doing music for? I
Yeah.
mean, wow, the money in film is like, quadruple the money
Oh,
in
yeah.
music. So
Yeah.
anyway,
And
so that's how I got interested in acting.
and the star of that movie was Diana Ross, and then the singer Brandy.
Yeah, so Brandy and Diana Ross. They were co-stars.
Yeah.
Brandy played Diana Ross's daughter,
Right.
and basically Diana Ross, her character, left her daughter to follow a music career, and so her daughter grew up with her dad and didn't know her, and then later found out that she was her mother, and then she was performing in town, and kind of that was their first time getting together, and that's the kind of the premise of the movie. And I played her band leader. I was her musical director, so it was not really a far stretch for me. So during that time, I decided to go back to school because I had started a master's program at Indiana University many, many years prior. This was like right after college,
Right.
2 years after college. But that's when I came home for the summer, and that's when I got the call. So I just came. I did 2 semesters. Was going back to do 2 more semesters. Yeah. But that summer is when I got the call to join Gloria Gaynor's band. And within 3 weeks of joining her band, I became her musical director. And I was with her for 5 years. I never went back to school.
Right.
But now I'm back in New York, and NYU had this fabulous program, number 2 in the world at the time. It was a film scoring program. It's called Scoring for Film and Multimedia. And I had already started writing I had done some industrial movies when I wasn't on the road in New York City. When I was, I spent 25 years on the Upper West Side, as I said. Yeah. So I decided to investigate this degree. And so when I investigated, I got very excited about it. So I decided to go back to school. So I went back to school. The last 2 years I was in New York. I want to continue to record. I want to continue to perform, and I want to continue to do film scores. I just the film score thing is like kind of big in my life now. I 2 weeks ago I won my new movie, won Best Original Score at the McKeesnathron International Film Festival, and I just found out yesterday that I am a finalist for Best New Composer at the Cannes World Film Festival. So
Oh, wow.
I hope to find out maybe later this week or early next week as to whether or not I win or I don't know. You know, I'm just a
Well,
finalist.
let me know, and I'll post it underneath the video, because a lot of musicians or keyboardists may be watching. So sometimes they're looking for a sound, or if they hear you play, they'll know. Do you have a certain amp
Well,
or
yeah,
speaker that you like playing through, or?
yeah. So here's the thing about that. So you know, if I'm doing something important or something that calls for it, what I do is I use basically main stage. And in main stage, I have all of my sounds so I can combine all these sounds. It's so flexible, this particular program, and very comprehensive. So I can get these plethora of incredible sounds coming out of the keyboard. So I don't even need any of this internal sounds of the P115, the Yamaha P115 that I'm using, because I have main stage and I'm using that library or those libraries
Right.
to make my sound. And yes, I think it's very, very important. The sound. I learned this early in life, and I got one of my big gigs I got because this guy was trying to sell me some sound gear, but he was right. He was right. He was saying, you know, you are as good as your sound. And that is true to some degree, because you can be a marvelous player, a marvelous musician, you know, like, you know, you're listening, you're an ensemble player, you're a soloist, you could be fabulous at all of that. But if the sound that's coming out is not right, it gets lost.
Yeah.
So he was right. And I invested in my early 20s, I invested in a beautiful sound setup for my keyboard. And so that has followed me my whole life. And I have a little small PA. I have a big PA if I need it, but I have a little small PA that I have some QSC speakers. And I have this beautiful, what's it called? Trying to think of the name of the board. It'll come to me. And so then I have these speakers, my keyboard, you know, main stage, and this board. This board, what's really nice about this board is that it allows you, it's one of those boards that will allow you to record. So if you hook it up to your computer, you can do multi-track recording, or you can record stereo to a SDD card, which is what I do. So every show that I use, and it's the PreSonus board is the one I'm talking about. It's like a 12-channel PreSonus board, but I have a bigger one. I have another one that's a 16 or 18 channel, something like that. But the PreSonus board is beautiful, and I put the SDD, so I always record, and then when I have time, I try to listen to myself, because when you're listening back to yourself, you always learn things that you know, when you listen back to yourself objectively, there's always improvements that you hear that you can make. And so I try to incorporate these. I always try to record so that I can incorporate them to my next performance. And so that I just kind of gradually get better and better, not only as a pianist, but also as a singer, you know. Chick was one of my heroes. I had a bunch of heroes from that period. It was Chick Corea, Keith Jarrett, Herbie Hancock, and McCoy Tyner. Those were my 4 heroes. And I listened to those guys incessantly back then. But now, you know who I really like now as a piano player, and I've always liked him, but now even more so, and he's just absolutely amazing, is Oscar Peterson.
Oh yeah. Oscar's the man. Yeah. Yeah, it's almost like listening to 4 keyboardists at one time when he plays. You know, it's amazing. Anyway, I wanted to also say there are going to be maybe some young players that are playing on here. And again, as you know, with the whole streaming thing, a lot of musicians don't really go out and interact with other musicians, as I said at the beginning, and they don't know there's this whole other side of music out there that you've just taken us through a journey of that, because it was a different time, and the dedication and the different things that can happen to you by just doing that. If you hadn't done one thing, something else might not have happened. And if you could give advice to any young musicians that are sitting in their room just doing riff after riff, or playing other people's music and they're musicians, do you have anything that you would impart on them to find their own voice or get out there and play? Any advice?
Well, yes. Number one, be kind. Be kind to your fellow musicians and hang out. Be out there. You know, you can never be too kind. Kindness is a beautiful thing. And it's camaraderie, it's respect, it's appreciation. And these things go a long ways in life.
Yeah.
So the combination of being out there and mingling with musicians, playing with musicians, learning from musicians, sharing with musicians,
Yeah.
and being kind could make all the difference in the world.
I can tell just from all your story, you've been to so many different places and so many changes, and you've kind of accumulated everything and kept a focus of who you are, and it comes through in your music and came through in your story today, and I hope people find value in it. But I will definitely post things periodically that you let me know that's going on for awards and things like that underneath the video, people, and I'm going to put links underneath for those that are watching where they can either find your music or connect with you for whatever reason. Maybe they're in a university or college or somewhere making a movie and they need someone to score it, whatever it is. This guy is a Swiss Army knife of musician because he can do everything. Sing, doesn't play drums, but he sings, plays piano, composes music, directs everything. So I'm really glad that I got to get you on here and learn more about you. Anyway, I really appreciate you taking the time out of your day to do this interview. Yeah.
Yeah, well, thank you very much for having me, James. It's a pleasure to see you again. And, every time that I have the opportunity to see you or talk to you is always a good experience. So I appreciate you and thanks for asking me on.
Oh, yeah. And then we'll talk a little after I end the video about something coming up. So, all right, everybody. Thanks for watching. I hope you watched the whole thing. And go ahead and follow James Morgan Jazz on Facebook. All my music is on all the streaming platforms, all your platforms. Bandcamp, you can buy all my albums. I have a great album with Gary Husband and Hadrian Farad and Eric Marienthal, and I think I'm going to be doing some music with Michael Raye here. So just keep follow everybody's journey, because that's what music is. It's just a journey, personal journey that you share with other people, and it's a great thing. I'm fortunate to be able to know people like Michael and meet people like him, and it's all because of music. So, all right, everybody, take care.